no matter how many good things you put in the body to try to address the clinical symptoms and clinical conditions that we try to improve, if those things are not delivered to the cells, to the tissues, to the organs, we're not going to do much. Now, guess what? Nitric oxide, it's a key piece for making that happen, that delivery of other things even.
Hi, functional friend. I'm Brendan Vermiere, the Director of Clinical Operations and Education at Berkeley Life. Welcome to a special episode of the More You Know series featuring a clinical grand round. The More You Know is a monthly webcast bringing you the latest insights on the importance of nitric oxide and blood flow for optimizing the body's natural healing systems. In this special episode, we feature a key leader in the wellness industry presenting a clinical case and a treatment plan that you can apply in your own practice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and visit berkeleylife.com for more information. Now let's get started. All right, functional friends, welcome back to the More You Know series presented by Berkeley Life. As always, I'm your host, Brendan Vermiere, the Director of Clinical Education for Berkeley Life, and I have the utmost privilege of getting to sit here with my good friend, Dr. Haroldo Magarinos, as we do a clinical grand rounds edition. So Haroldo will be presenting a case study for success of how he's using nitric oxide to help his patients feel better faster. Haroldo, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me to be here.
Oh, absolutely. So being one of our medical advisors and one of our key opinion leaders and a dear friend, dear colleague that so many have a lot of respect for, I was super excited to have you on the show. We love doing these clinical grand rounds to really give other practitioners tangible examples of how do we incorporate Berkeley Life nitric oxide testing and therapeutics into practice, because certainly as the Director of Clinical Education, as I'm educating practitioners, I do see kind of a lot of confusion and overwhelm with, they're like, wow, nitric oxide, it's involved in so many physiological biochemical processes. So, how do I know where and when to use the nitric oxide total solution system? And I always like to joke, you'll appreciate it, that if you have a pulse, nitric oxide is for you, right? So obviously, though, being able to present a case study that illustrates, the power of nitric oxide and how to use this, I think it's extremely valuable education. And being one of our medical advisors and an amazing practitioner yourself, I'm excited to see the case that you have prepared for us today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited to present it. Actually, this is something that really became outstanding from everyone I was seeing at that time, because it was one of the first times I started with nitric oxide supplementation from the beginning. And I know now would be my way to go right away, but at that time I was thinking when would be the perfect timing for adding that, and knowing all the pathways inside the body that are required for making this to become activated and utilized and being converted actually to from those nitrates that they go back to the mouth in actual nitric oxide that we can utilize for so many health benefits. So I was like, well, maybe we need to work in the gut a little bit first, and that will do the trick. This is all just my clinical thinking from those times. And for this person, I will share my screen right now, if you don't mind, and
Absolutely.
hopefully I will do it right, because I typically, not so great sharing screens. So let me.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, worked.
Yep, looks great on my side.
Perfect, awesome. So, okay, great, awesome. I should learn a little bit more about this. So this person was a 50-year-old female that came with low energy, sleep quality was poor. She was complaining. She woke up multiple times in the night, and she didn't feel rested at the end of the day. She has chronic sinus infections, and I standardly test for toxins. This is something I'm really big into. I will tell you right away why, because I've been working in the microbiome, as you know, for many years, and that was the big wall that was not allowing me to move forward. I was really looking for an answer. Okay, what's going to make the gut get better? And the transversal common factor that I was seeing for everyone at the end was that presence of toxins that were disrupting the gut microbiome and the gut environment over and over. So I started testing for toxins for as a standard testing in my initial assessments, and I start taking care of this. Um, and so this person got also, she had a lot of issues and the GI tract. I did a gut tumor analysis, and you will ask me, well, why you didn't do the bioeffects? Because I'm big with bioeffects. The only reason was because she was already doing the other one with Vibrant, the toxins. So we
Yeah.
did just a package and we took everything together. This is the other one that I use, bioeffects and gut tumor. And hormonal imbalances. She had hypothyroidism diagnosed many, many years ago, but she was very inconsistent in treating that. So, and when she was treating this, was using synthetic drugs, was not
Mm-hmm.
using any type of bioidentical hormone replacement um, therapy. So we did a gut tumor analysis, low diversity, as I was expecting that. The FP ratio was a little bit elevated. She got a lot of these very nasty gram negatives, and we know they raise endotoxemia. The short-chain fatty acid production overall was low. She definitely had some issues with digestion, with total fecal fat elevated. So we saw already the GI tract was not doing great. Thyroid also off range. Um, she had a lot of T4, but then I figured out that was because of the drugs she was using for so long that they were not getting converted into
Mm-hmm.
T3. Her
Mm-hmm.
liver probably was dysfunctional, actually seeing the SHBG or sex hormone binding globulin being high also usually refers to liver issues, and cortisol was high for the nighttime. There you have a little bit of the problem with the sleep that she was talking about, and dihydrotestosterone was actually low. So we saw these imbalances at the beginning, and this is not something I directly take care of, but something I know that can get better by dealing with the microbiome and detoxification on the side. But and toxins. We have, yeah, nothing really outstandingly high in red, but there were a lot in the moderate levels. And we know all of these things, even in moderate elevations, they can pose a risk for health in many, many ways. So there's a big list of here of mycotoxins combined with heavy metals and environmental toxins. And she was actually doing a lot of things for improving her diet and being healthy at that time. I think she was not doing enough, but also
Mm-hmm.
the location she was living was is known to be to have a lot of farming around, and unfortunately, I believe that that was exposing her to a lot of these chemicals, and that's quite unavoidable unless you move out, and it's not something you would recommend straight from the beginning. You know, like
Yeah.
where you live is in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So we start something mild, and so I put this initial protocol. We have binders included, some glutathione, multivitamin. We started treating the sinuses as well because she had some sinus issues. And I think related to the mold toxins, we start with Megaspore Biotic. We did some improvement in the liver function. We used the Quicksilver's liver sauce, and magnesium is a key piece for all my protocols. We use a couple of mild detox botanicals, Toxis, Immunar, OG, NDI. This boost the GI activity. And the last but not least, to the opposite, Berkeley Life Nitric Oxide support. And we started that, and we started that from the very beginning. So for some reason, these things they took a while. I remember that we use a third party company to get these supplements, but Berkeley we got it directly from the company and arrived actually pretty fast before the other one. So even without my intentionality behind this, she started this before, and this is
Mm-hmm.
something that really was an aha moment because she started taking this, and she texted me like a week after and told me, "Look, I feel way more energy now, and my sleep actually got better." And I was like, "Okay, but we haven't started nothing yet." No, 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 I did. Like, I started with the nitric oxide. Oh, really? Okay, that was interesting. And so, well, we know the benefits of nitric oxide support supplementation, so cardiovascular, immune, wellness. So I think that that was, and I don't think, I'm sure, sorry, correct myself, that was a very important pathway that she got affected from probably God knows how many years ago. And that was never addressed because unfortunately, we see a lot of health practitioners are not really into nitric oxide yet, and
Mhm.
they don't understand the relationship, the intimate relationship with all these biological pathways. So we use that and already start kicking in very, very fast. And and then I believe with the combination of other types of supplements, they have some overlapping in functionalities. We start getting more and more improvements in her protocol, in her clinical conditions, and the vasodilation and the detoxification and the antioxidant effects are completely boosted by the activity of nitric oxide. We know that, and therefore the clinical benefits like increased energy levels and the cognitive function and detoxification on the side, I believe they're going to be completely enhanced. And I think that's the missing piece that we're losing on certain protocols that involve gut health and detoxification altogether. The same with the thyroid imbalance. Probably there was a hyperthyroid at that time state because there was a lot of T4 circulating, but not properly converted. And so TSH was not really kicking in. And I think that was making her feel very bad. But we know that, again, nitric oxide can support all the microcirculation and oxygen delivery, and that will improve the gland function, the thyroid gland function. And also will reduce, because works in the vagus nerve, reduce the thyroid the stress push that can affect the thyroid axis, and then you can get better functioning on your thyroid gland. And also because of the liver detoxification aspect and increase permeability and perfusion to the liver organ, you also boost the detoxification and improve conversion of T4 into T3 by doing so. So there's a lot of things that I believe that they were kicking in pretty fast that were not addressed before because of this lack of oxygenation, this lack of exchange of gases, and this lack of functionality of these organs because they were missing this key piece in the puzzle. And I'm not saying that that was the only piece of the puzzle that probably worked and make everything better, but the synergistic effect of all this, but plus other things that I was using from before that I know they work, and that make everything working faster and better. And that's we're all about, like making things better and faster, efficiency. um I think it was William Seeds was talking about efficiency all the time. I remember him being like, efficiency is the key piece for getting things done. So I talk about those. So we tested not so far away from the initial testing. It was July 2023. And I know you will say, oh, what happened with aluminum? Okay, yes, I know. It's off the roof. She took some medication, aluminum containing medication for some incidental health issue she had when she was traveling. And we tested very soon after. So probably that skyrocketed the aluminum levels. So I will tell them to disregard that because we know exactly the source, and it was just an incidental exposure, not something that was before there. But if you look at the list, it looks pretty different from the previous one. Way more toxins, way less toxins detected. So the ones you see lower is not the ones are not the ones that only that we took care of. There's many others that disappeared. So that means that we did a really good job taking care of a lot of the toxicological issues in a very short time. I don't expect this to go so fast,
Mhm.
typically. And again, I typically don't see things going that fast. So the fact that this was the differential factor, adding the nitric oxide supplementation from the beginning and seeing this improvement, makes me at least think that the that was one of the boosting elements for getting these results faster than what I used to see on other clients. So, and again, we know the benefits of the clinical improvements of the nitric oxide. So I'm all about thinking that the combination of all the supplements and including nitric oxide in the protocol was allowed this person to improve her gut health and the GI symptoms and the fatigue and the brain fog and the sleep disorders and the overall sense of well-being in a much faster pace than without addressing that part. So my conclusion here is that the personalized supplement protocol did help, but the nitric oxide support played a pivotal role in improving cardiovascular, gut, and immune health for an improved and accelerated outcome. That was what I could notice from this person and this situation in particular. That's all I wanted to share.
Absolutely, brother. Really good case study. And as we unpack this for a few minutes for the benefit of the audience, there's a lot of layers to it. And what I kind of want to highlight, and then we'll unpack it a little bit, is I think it's a little tricky for me sometimes. With my background in fitness and nutrition, kind of the sports performance world, if you will, nitric oxide has always been embraced as an ergogenic aid to boost performance, right? The idea of the narrative was always like train longer, train harder, recover faster by optimizing blood flow. So it's kind of interesting for me with that background. And then here I am like 15 years later in the functional medicine space, because I think the functional medicine world, to your point, hasn't fully caught on to the therapeutic power of nitric oxide in blood flow, right? And I think it can be kind of a big missing piece where as basic as maybe it seems, and it could be easy to overlook how, well, hey, vasodilation for our vascular health and promoting optimal blood flow, but also things like lymphatic drainage. Those lymphatic vessels also are lined with endothelial cells. And guess what? Nitric oxide is what regulates the vasodilation of the lymphatic vessels. So when we're talking about, how do we oxygenate the body and have proper mitochondrial function and ATP production, like none of these sort of therapeutic mechanisms can really work properly if we're not able to effectively perfuse them and get oxygenation to those cells. So kind of highlighting that component of how by leveraging the healing power of nitric oxide, we can really, I would argue, I would postulate that we can really improve the efficacy of the protocols that we're already using. And when I was watching your case study, I think you and I have a lot of similarities with how we look at things and how we approach, the microbiome component, the toxic burden, which, let's be real, I think is one of the greatest threats to human health that there really is anymore. But when we look at all these different mechanisms by which nitric oxide can support the blood flow, the detoxification, the lymph flow, it really can increase the overall efficacy. And I think what you highlighted was really neat as far as, it wasn't even intentional, but she started the nitric oxide product first just because it got there fast. And at Berkeley, the thing that we hear over and over and over as far as positive feedback from patients and practitioners is the increased energy and the increased cognitive clarity. That's what we hear more than anything else. And I think this case study exemplifies that. But I love the way that you started with your initial testing. I love that you're doing the toxic burden testing and microbiome testing, but also like the thyroid was a big piece because I'm sure you see it a lot too. So many of these individuals that are struggling with chronic health complaints, you know, all too often they're not getting that full comprehensive thyroid panel. So even if they're taking the Synthroid or the T4 or whatever, but they might not be effectively converting it, or too much of it's going that reverse T3 pathway, which might be upregulated because of like the toxic burden and the inflammation caused by some of these, microbiome and leaky issues. So I think this is a really unique approach that you're taking, and to me, it seems really well-rounded. I'd love to hear kind of, do you feel that the toxic burden, microbiome, these are core components that you address in all of your patients regularly?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think that that's the big elephant in the room. You need to remove the disruptive agents from the
Hmm.
body before uh, willing or just addressing imbalances on a more profound way. Because I always look like this: like if you want to organize your room, you need to first take things out, clean, then you can put the furniture back whatever you want. But the detoxification aspect, it is critical for opening pathways.
Hmm.
But typically when we see, and for anyone that is listening, that knows a little bit about the extracellular matrix and how things are communicating and how we open channels in the body, and how we transport things through the body, we have a critical component there that typically is missing. And no matter how many good things you put in the body to try to address the clinical symptoms and clinical conditions that we try to improve, if those things are not delivered to the cells, to the tissues, to the organs, we're not going to do much.
Hmm.
Now, guess what? Nitric oxide, it's a key piece for making that happen, that delivery of
Hmm.
other things even. And we want to repair. We put a beautiful probiotic. We put a beautiful amino acid there. We use a great botanical for repairing the gut, boswellia or whatever you can imagine. It needs to be delivered. It needs to be carried there. It needs to be infused into the tissues, and that's where nitric oxide does the magic. And so I think became, because of that aha moment, my way to go from the very beginning. I had the mindset before that, oh, we need to address this and that before jumping into nitric oxide.
Hmm.
But again, that was because I was not, like many practitioners at that time, maybe not using that enough. And I didn't see the clinical evidence that completely contradict my initial guessing. And with that clinical evidence, now everything changes. Now nitric oxide starts from the beginning because opens the pathways for everything else that I'm trying to do, improves everything I'm putting on the side, makes everything faster and better. And that has been, this is one clinical case, but that has been a constant from that moment on. And every single other person that I saw afterwards that I started with the same approach, it showed me the same positive responses in terms of improvement and overall well-being.
Absolutely. And especially I can imagine with what's fun about this conversation with your background in dental experience and then with my background kind of more fitness and nutrition. I think what gets me really excited about nitric oxide and specifically the nitrate pathway, which to the audience, for those of you watching, if you're new to Berkeley Life, if you're new to the nitric oxide conversation, it's absolutely critical to understand the difference between the nitric oxide synthase pathway versus the nitrate pathway. We're really leveraging the nitrate pathway, so you can watch our other episodes of the More You Know series where I go into a lot of detail about all of this. But I think it's really neat with the nitrate pathway. It changes the way that we think about nitric oxide. Like once we wrap our heads around this nitric oxide molecule, it does so much, to your point, opening the pathways and allowing everything to work better. And then I think especially when practitioners get educated on the nitrate pathway and this mechanism by which we're literally recycling nitrate through the body by way of the salivary glands and that oral microbiome that you're such an expert in, and seeing how, oh gosh, well, the oral health and the status of that oral microbiota playing into that nitric oxide. Since you're the expert, I'd love to give you the opportunity to speak to that real quick on that oral microbiota as a key regulator in nitric oxide status.
Well, it's something I did mention that yesterday, actually, and the talk I talked to told you about. The This should be the standard. I
Yeah.
can't even understand with the tremendous amount of evidence we have that this has not became the standard in oral health,
Yeah.
that dentists are not talking enough about this.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of conversations about probiotics in the mouth and testing for microbiome in the mouth, but not about something that is so critical, so much easier to do, like something that is accessible to everyone. And that still is not a part of the big conversation, which it should be. Because um, the way that we feed our microbiome, the oral microbiome, I say this in my oral gut lectures, it's by the enterosalivary circulation. This is not restricted to nitric oxide, but nitric oxide probably set the ground to understand much better how we bring nutrients from the gut into the mouth. Now, if anyone has a periodontal disease or any other type of imbalance in the mouth related to microbiome conditions, we know there's a feeding problem probably underlying those conditions. And the only way you're going to feed properly your microbiome is feeding through that enterosalivary circulation pathway, where you grab your nutrients from the gut and bring them back to the salivary glands. Well, nitric oxide does the same thing. And because of that, it's critical to get it in your diet, because that's the only way you're going to bring it back efficiently in a consistent basis to your mouth, where you're going to feed your microbes and they will get regulated to the point that they will become more efficient in converting those nitrates into nitrites, that then further after you can convert into nitric oxide in the gut. So that critical step gets better when you improve the oral status of your microbes, but the oral the oral status of your microbiome, and the um, the 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 incorporation of those nutrients is a key piece for maintaining that feeding process for the oral microbiome to get better at that. So now we're connecting those two ecosystems, and we know they're supporting each other, because of course, if the oral microbiome gets better, now everything else gets better, because we're passing healthy microbes, we're passing all these byproducts we need for converting, making nitric oxide in the body and other molecules as well. We're feeding our immune system with proper information. We're making so many beautiful things. So we feed our oral microbiome, and our oral microbiome brings great things for us in the gut, that then they start expanding into the body, upregulating or downregulating things for our own benefit, our own health benefit. So I'm fascinated about this
Oh yeah.
circle of life that I call it.
Yeah.
And the, um, the nitric oxide, I think it's this missing piece that will bring benefits to both areas, gut and oral microbiome altogether. Now, the oral exposure to nitrates also is critical. So even either if you're using a supplemental form, or you're using foods as your source of nitrates, the exposure, it's key. And that means that you need to chew your foods, not swallow things right away, because that's not going to give you the exposure you need. But just knowing that these beautiful foods becomes probiotics to the microbiome of the mouth, and then you can convert these molecules for its own benefits, and you can regulate the oral microbiome by using them in a timely manner. That it's a critical piece of information that everyone should have in terms of dietary guidelines, and any approach that is aiming for improving performance and healthiness in the oral microbiome and the rest of the body.
Mhm.
And that recommendation, again, I don't hear that enough. I don't hear people saying, hey, you know what, take care of your nitrates. Or even more, what are you doing for improving the feeding process of your oral microbiome through your gut?
Mhm.
And again, that nitric oxide, it's so critical for fixing both. So it's so comprehensive that I don't understand yet why this is not being used more. Dentists, they're the ones that they should be using this standardly
Yeah.
before any toothpaste or mouthwash. This should be the standard of care because it does bring so many benefits.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more. And it's exciting with the work we're doing with Berkeley. They are growing very quickly in the dental space, perhaps more than any other space, which is really cool and exciting for me because I agree with, how much time I have been spending. Like recently I wrote an oral microbiome and nitric oxide white paper for Berkeley. And so I've spent so much time digging into the large and rapidly expanding body of evidence around, the oral microbiota and oral health as it relates to like neurological health or whole body health, cardiometabolic, gastrointestinal. And it's really neat the way that the nitrate, nitric oxide pathway that kind of connects all the pieces, right? Because we're recycling it. And I think a lot of people need to be made aware of how nitrate, NO3 minus, has this prebiotic-like effect. And so to your point, it is through that mastication and the thorough chewing of our food. For one thing, it gives all of our, our hunger hormones the opportunity to signal properly, but also we're, marinating that garden of life in the mouth with those nitrates, with those prebiotics to, improve the composition of that oral microbiota, but also to your point, improve the oral microbiome's ability to reduce the nitrate and nitrite into that miracle molecule, nitric oxide. So to the audience, this is where the nitric oxide salivary nitrite test strips can be so useful, where to Geraldo's point, we're able to use these test strips to essentially get some evidence as far as how well is your oral microbiota able to reduce the nitrate that you're either getting from your diet or through the nitric oxide foundation product, and being able to reduce that salivary nitrate into nitrite, which is what the test strips are using or measuring. So as like a clinical pearl, these can be useful sort of proxy indicator of oral microbiome health. If you have somebody that they're not able to effectively reduce the nitrate, they might be taking the capsules, they might be eating spinach salads every day, but if they have that deficient dysbiotic oral microbiome, it's not going to show up on the strip because they're not reducing it. So I think when you look at some of these prebiotic effects of the nitrate, both in the oral cavity and in the gut, it makes sense why it works so well. Like when I was looking at your protocol for that case study, I, the practitioner in me is just, enchanted by it because like the glutathione, I love combining nitric oxide sport with glutathione and, like the megaspore prebiotic, because, we kind of think of these things differently. We think like, well, glutathione, that's, redox, that's antioxidant activity, megaspore, okay, that's microbiome diversity and GI integrity. But then nitric oxide is kind of in the middle, and you see how all these things are mechanistically working together. So I think covering those bases of let's support, binding and detoxing those toxins. Let's work on the ecosystem, both in your mouth and your gut. But nitric oxide very much enhances both of those outcomes through these mechanisms that you outlined.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what was intention, and as you highlighted, the ability of nitric oxide to become the carrier and the enhancer, but also a standalone molecule for activating so many other pathways. It's a signaling molecule by definition, but the way that synergistically works with other protocols, it's something that I was mind blown. I loved it because yeah, you don't think about it that much, and
Yeah.
if you are not properly trained. Um, and then the connection sometimes is not made.
Yeah.
Now it I will recommend though always take something to stimulate your gastric function and your GI function as a natural prokinetic, for example. That will make nitric oxide work even more. Like nitrates will become more easily converted into nitric oxide at the end of the day if you boost that part of your body. So I like that beautiful combination of using some natural prokinetics, which I'm all about. I'm sucker for bitters. I love bitters. I just can't get enough bitters. And it's a cultural thing for me because we have them traditionally after every meal.
Mm,
But and I know in Europe they do the same, but not so much here.
yeah.
But bitters are so good for stimulating your gut. So when you start thinking about all the things you probably as a practitioner you have done, but not the nitric oxide in the middle, and now you add that, it just blends so well. It makes so much better all the protocols and all the beneficial clinical outcomes that we're looking for. Um, and one thing I wanted to mention on the same note is that the oral microbiome, it's um, it's regulating everything else afterwards.
Mhm,
So if you're looking for immunological health or anything else that you need to regulate in the gut, and you are not thinking about the ways you're managing the oxygen, the the natural conditions that we need on the oral tissues, you're not going to regulate the oral microbiome.
mhm,
100%. I'm positive about that. So mastication moves muscles, moves lymph, moves everything in terms of the tissues to make things go in the right direction. Oh, the mechanical stimulation is critical, but you need nitric oxide to make that system work properly. So
mhm.
masticating, critical. Like these muscles, they need to be used. We're losing the ability for using these muscles. Ligaments, bone structure, teeth all together, they have this cushion system that gets compressed and stimulates all the blood vessels, which are terminal arteries and blood vessels and veins there. And the nerves, they get stimulated, they send signals to your brain, which is pretty close. You have even neurological structures which are critical. They're just above the palate. That's
Mhm.
such a critical area for proper neurological and physiological stimulation. But you need the nitric oxide
Yeah.
because that will connect all the dots for making things flowing in the right direction and ultimately healing this part of the body. That's something I left behind, and I think is critical because I say all the time we're living in a smoothie culture, and it's fine. You can drink your smoothie, but you can live your life out of smoothies. You need to
Mhm.
chew your foods.
I think, well, and I appreciate that point. It makes me think back to, you know, early in my career with nutrition coaching on eating habits, right? Like we don't really think about chewing. We're all like mindlessly scrolling on our phones and slamming the
Exactly.
food down really, really quick. But the more I hang out with functional dentists and everything, I keep hearing more and more just how important that mastication process is. And so, shameless plug for the Berkeley Life nitric oxide gum that we created, which is exactly dentists are freaking out about the new gum. I
I love
didn't
this.
I didn't realize that dentists were so excited about gum, but then having this therapeutic gum where that was the whole point of why Berkeley created the gum was, okay, we take the dietary nitrate and we want it to have that prebiotic effect locally in the oral cavity. But obviously, if you're just swallowing capsules of nitrate, it's never going to touch that oral microbiome unless it recycles back through the salivary glands. So then they're like, oh, well, let's put it in a gum matrix. So that way you're chomping on the gum, you're getting that mastication signaling like you just described, while supplying that nitrate directly to the oral microbiota to increase the diversity, to increase the nitrate reducing capacity, while obviously then giving the substrate that is nitrate to feed that nitric oxide pathway.
Yeah. The I will say that if you can do the combination of both,
Mhm.
probably that's the perfect combo for boosting your nitric oxide levels. And um, we can't, unfortunately, trust foods anymore in their content of nitrates and many other nutrients. We expect to see, unfortunately, farming practices nowadays they disrupted pretty much everything that we were looking for in terms of nutritional content in our foods. And not pointing fingers. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And as a fact, we need to take care of that.
Yeah.
as many other things like the pollutants I was showing in the presentation. You can't do much about them. They're in the environment. Just, we need to become more proactive. Now, it will be sad, be willing to become more proactive and not having tools, but we have tools for this. And for the nitric oxide, we can definitely upregulate and compensate the deficiencies by using a supplement. The nitrates in the capsule, yes, they do work amazingly well, and I'm clear about that. But with the chewing gum, I love the chewing gum because that's two things on the top of the nitrates. It does stimulate the muscles and the masticatory organs, which are critical for oral health. And again, I can't emphasize that enough. It's a missing piece. People who are looking for oral health and they're not masticating their foods, they're not exercising their muscles, they're going to create a stagnation in their mouth.
Mhm.
But the other thing is that you stimulate your salivary glands for
Mhm.
flushing nutrients, which are, again, essential for feeding your oral microbes. And now you're flushing your salivary glands and you're providing nitrates on the side to feed your oral microbiome. So it's a perfect combination. I love it. Like, I mean, like literally everyone in my family loves it, and I had to hide those things because
Yeah.
they're never enough. It's because it becomes a very fun routine, but it's so profound in improving your health at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think these clinical grand rounds are extremely valuable, and I thought that was an amazing case study. So, to the audience, just as again a reminder, be sure to check out the other More You Know series and the Berkeley Life resources, because if you're needing more help with how to incorporate the total nitric oxide solution system, that's what we're here to support you on. So that way you can be as successful with helping your clients feel better, faster, like Geraldo's doing. But Geraldo, where can people learn more about you and your work and continue learning from you?
Well, I have an active Instagram account that people can look for some information I'm trying to post on a hopefully daily basis. That's Dr. Haroldo. That's and there's a website. I have all my content that is Revolution Gut Health, where I have a lot of posts about this type of topics, connection between nutrition, oral health, gut health, toxins, etc. So, and then you can reach out to me if anything, if you need me.
Absolutely. You're not hard to find. You're very well respected in the industry,
Okay.
and we love having you as one of our medical advisors and one of our major nitric oxide experts. And I'm personally just very grateful to have you as a friend as well. So this was really a wonderful opportunity for us to get together, share some information. So I really appreciate your time and your expertise, my friend.
Oh, nothing to appreciate. I'm really happy to be here. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to follow for more insightful wellness content from Berkeley Life.